When I play the game of the NLA, I can see where my money goes, and it's an investment into our culture.
Yes, Grenada, when you play the games of the NLA, you enable us to invest in the skills and talents of our people in the areas of sports, culture, and nation building.
Good evening and welcome to another Community Forum. MTV Community Forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell. Welcome wherever you are. And of course, our co-host, Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to our listeners and viewers on all the various platforms. We welcome you again to another Community Forum.
Chris, this week just moved so rapidly, man. It's incredible. And I just want to say that our special guest this evening is Anslem Clouden. He'll be joining us a bit later. He's the chairman, of course, of the Cannabis Commission. He's here to give us an update, a status report on how things are going as far as implementing government policy on this, on the cannabis industry. So we'll have him after the break. Chris, something that came to our attention, the question of corruption, yeah? And there is a corruption perception index. It's an index that scores and ranks countries by their perceived levels of public sector corruption. And this is assessed by certain experts and business executives. But what's interesting is Grenada's numbers. My information is that it's falling. You know the numbers. How is it falling and what's causing it to fall? That means drop. We're getting better. You explain this to us.
Well, the last report that came out is that Grenada moved from 56 to 53 in the ranking among 180 countries that are a part of this corruption index. In other words, we improve, and at the lower the number, you're getting to 1, right? 1 is way at the top.
Yeah.
So the lower the number, the better you are, kind of thing. So it is a reflection that we have been doing some positive things as it relates to corruption within the context of what happens in the public service. You have the Integrity Commission, which is very much active and holds a lot of chairmen of boards and members of boards and parliamentarians to submissions that they have to make so that their conduct is above board and not within question. That helps. And of course, our court system still functions relatively efficiently in bringing justice and dealing with matters that's supposed to, on the corruption side that will happen. So, I mean, generally, it is a work in progress. Countries still have to look at ways to improve. They still have to look at investors and when they come in, what happens and the rules and regulations that they have to follow through the JIDC and other institutions like that. And of course, hold everybody accountable in terms of anti-money laundering and the rules and laws surrounding that. So I think, we're doing relatively
So it's a good thing. We're moving in the right direction.
Yes.
The other thing, Chris, the numbers of persons admitted to the Mungib Mental Hospital as reported by the minister, major movements, in other words, reduction in these numbers significantly, moving from 411 in 2023 to 190 in 2024. Major. What do you think is responsible for this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to congratulate the Ministry of Health and the mental health institution in that the numbers have dropped. It means that our intervention programs probably at the community levels is helping in that not everybody gets institutionalized and the cost associated with that. So if we could identify mental health issues early and deal with it at the primary level in terms of health, primary health care, that's a positive thing. And it means that you don't put the strain on the organization. And there's a whole how people treat people with mental health, and it is good to know that we're making good strides. That has been an area of weakness in our healthcare system dealing with mental health patients. and how we treat them and how we deal with them. So it's good to see the numbers coming down, and whatever programs they have available now, I think they need to continue doing it and keep doing the good things. I mean, you have to praise good things when you see
when it happens. Yeah. And we know that. This is significant. Chris, there's an issue with supermarkets, and there's an issue with farmers being able to market their produce in some major supermarkets, let me tell you. So for example, we're now in the citrus season. What's happening is these supermarkets, some of them, they've got licenses to import products that are available locally. So farmers are unable to, the supermarkets are saying, look, we have a container full of products, we can't take yours. So government need to monitor and know what's available locally, and therefore provide licenses for importation accordingly. It's unacceptable that farmers producing in a difficult environment are unable to sell their products because of importation.
I am very disappointed to hear that we bring in all these fruits and vegetables in container loads. You could argue that in Grenada, consistency of supply and quality may be affected at certain times.
Yeah.
The citrus industry have been hit with a lot of disease and so on. So production levels probably will be down. So businessman will want to ensure that he have a consistent supply for his customer. Mm-hmm. But if I have local farmers that have produce, I think we must carve out a niche in your supply chain, and as these supermarkets do for local farmers. Because at the end of the day, we could compare that. If I get a local lime compared to an imported lime, I'm not sure what I get on the import side. I'm not sure.
And limes are in fact one of those products.
Right. So I'm not sure in terms of the quality and other things. It's the same thing that when we import a lot of carrots, you hear things that carrots are used to, what's the right word here? Take away some of the harmful effects in the soil, and carrots absorb. And they ship these lovely big round carrots to us, and we don't do tests to understand what heavy metals are there or not. But here we have local farmers who, go beyond to farm and use local manure and so on. So I have concern about it. I understand the business proposition here, but at the same time, we must carve out in your supply chain something for local farmers.
So greater monitoring by the ministry, because it's the ministerial officers that give license for the supermarket.
And here comes the marketing board. Marketing board has a role in this.
Exactly. So this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Chris, a little bit of politics. We informed that the NDC convention is coming up next week. I think it's on the 3rd, 2nd, that weekend. But what's interesting, as reported, is that a number of positions, I think, for example, the position of General Secretaries is likely to change. But one that I note is that of the chairman, which is presently held by Sylvester Qualis, a past minister in the NDC government, and of course a businessman. But here's the thing, and I'm to understand, as reported by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that he'll be taking up the position of High Commissioner in Canada. Now, I'm not faulting the gentleman. But the Minister of Foreign Affairs indicated earlier on, a year ago or so, that the Foreign Service will be professionalized. I don't see this happening by this appointment. This seems to be, you're the chairman, we're giving you something. I think it's time because why? Canada is an important location, Ottawa. Canada GDP is over 2 trillion, over 2 trillion. So it's an important country in terms of the value and what we can earn from that through negotiations. And I don't think the designated candidate has this ability. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I am not.
So I think we are not making a proper investment there in this regard. That's my view.
Sometimes I say in politics, more things change, more they remain the same. And the reason sometimes is that we still look at making political appointees. A good example of this is when the government came out and they said they want to professionalize boards and statutory boards and ask people to send in their CVs and so on and so forth. But when you look at the composition of boards now, you're hardly seeing this professionalization of the boards.
But I still give them a little credit because they've been, a number of directors have been trained in accredited directors, through I think a Canadian institution. So I give kudos to that. But that point remains. That point is taken, Chris.
Yeah, so looking at the appointment, Mr. Qualis, of course, I don't know of his qualifications in international diplomacy and all of these things, and his ability to hold the High Commission office to a standard and a level that will bring us the benefits that we hope. I hear the minister talking about cost savings and sharing with St. Lucia and so on and so forth. But as you say, the market is a very important market in Canada for us. We have a lot of bilaterals with Canada. We have a lot of aid that comes through the Canadian government to the country.
Very important.
So it is whether or not he could maximize that, improve it, and see where we go, especially the pulling out of things under Trump 2.0 of USAID and the contribution they have made.
But I'm just holding the government responsible here because they did state it, a stated policy statement that we'll be professionalizing the Foreign Service. This is not in line with this. This is not in line with this as far as I can see.
High commissioners, ambassadors. I mean,
Chris,
we
the Development Planning Authority. We saw demolition taking place in Grandin Speech. The authority exercising its jurisdiction.
Yeah, and properly so.
And properly so.
Yeah, because I think not only the fact that the gentleman was given all this notice that he's building on lands that is not his, and obviously he didn't get approval from the Planning and Development Authority, so they were well within their right to demolish the structure. Now, some of these guys play games that you continue to build and you go and throw the mercies or yourself on the mercies of the court and say, well, you spent X amount of money and could we do something and compromise? And our attorneys will argue for that position if they're representing. But at the end of the day, you cannot encourage people to break the law as blatantly as they're doing and have no consequences, or else we're fast becoming a lawless state. So when you look at that, when you look at what's happening on Port Authority, when you look at what's happening in all the illegal Woodford,
yes,
and so on, the question becomes, when do we draw the line and start taking some serious action?
But what we saw there was appropriate action.
Yes, in my view.
Absolutely, yeah. I heard the president of the Public Workers Union, Brother Grimes, yesterday in the news, headline news, saying that the union is not in receipt of its union dues, which is payable by its members, but the money is transferred via the government, via deductions. And this is going to have a major impact on their ability, on their operations. They won't be able to pay their staff and for the month and other things. He doesn't know why. His inquiries didn't lead anywhere. But clearly this is an unfortunate.
It is, and that there's a legal context to this. Because when you deduct money from people's salary, you're required to hand it over. It's not your money.
Yeah.
And you would assume that the deduction did take place by the government from everybody's emoluments, and at the end of the day, this must be transferred. So it leaves a worry and a perception in your mind, seeing that the budget is so late to be presented, whether that is a consequence of that. Because government recurrent expenditure, yes, they did a warrant for, I think it was 300 or 400 million, but the issue is they are limited because the budget has not passed both houses. And the legal authority to spend is not there as yet. So you wonder about these things and if there's an impact from the lateness of the reading of the budget on
But at least there should be communication.
Yes, I mean, sometimes it could be a glitch and the monies haven't been transferred. So you have to leave room for that as well.
Okay, look, now also in Carriacou, the information coming in, they're doing very good work up there, Chris. What are you learning?
Well, they have installed, I think, one of the big tanks, storage tanks. They have a project to continue to do another one. But what is interesting is that the pipe networks for the storage of this water is going to start immediately so that more distribution, the distribution network could be widened and more people will have access to water in Carriacou. And you remember Carriacou and Petit Martinique have desalination plants as well, which help augments their water supply in Carriacou in severe dry season. So this is a positive thing for the Carriacou and to some degree Petit Martinique. Once people can get water, which is life, I mean, things can happen. And more development, hotels, Airbnb, and a lot of things can happen in Carriacou.
So kudos to Nawasa.
Yeah, so it helps. That infrastructure development will help develop the economy of Carriacou through the touristic lines and so on.
Sound good. Chris, that's all the time we have. Viewers, that's all the time we have in our chit-chat. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to have Anslem Clouden, Chairman of the Cannabis Commission, to give us an update on how that's going. Please stay with us.
allied laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories. See our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for life and allied laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Always with the introductions. Did you see, my brother?
Everything good.
Is the vibe?
Right. Everything
Choose you and
Right.
grade you like that.
right.
So I will choose the money
Right.
because even if I wasn't married,
Right.
I would need the money to be able to maintain a girl like Jada. We're
Right.
going for a month.
Right.
Bread and cheese.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
take
Well
that last
said.
shot.
Well said. He can take this shot. I bet me in you.
What? Yo, yo.
Really? You must do it on. You must do it on. You must do it on.
Yes, slow down.
You must do it on.
Slow down. Slow down.
Welcome back, viewers, to MTV Community Forum. Of course, I was Baron Campbell, Chris, the Ali co-host. Our guest this evening is no other than attorney at law, my good friend, Anslem Clouden. And Anslem, welcome to Community Forum. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Baron, and thanks for having me. I do appreciate it.
Look, the chairman, I call you chairman this evening. The initial commission established in September 2022 was expected to deliver its report within 14 months. That didn't happen. A new commission, in fact, was established thereafter. In fact, last year in the 2024 budget, what was stated was that the new legislation to advance the agenda of the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis is expected to come on stream during the first quarter of 2024, under your chairmanship. We are in the first quarter of 2025, a year later. Tell us what's happening and why is this delay? What is contributing to
Anything
this?
is happening. Let's go.
Chairman.
A lot has been happening, Baron. But let me tell you my own experience. Now, the NDC party took a conscious decision having regard to the CARICOM recommendations with respect to decriminalization and subsequently legalization of cannabis throughout the region. This was CARICOM. And they made certain, they gave certain advice as to how to proceed. Now, NDC had on its platform and had given priority to it during the campaign.
It's part of the manifesto.
It's part of the manifesto, rightly so. And so I campaigned in Carriacou at the time and encouraged our people to get to the polls and the young people, because of the manifest injustice that was perpetrated on our youthful generation who smoke anyhow, 18 and above. And not only that, Byron, the world recognized in the 2005 that cannabis has tremendous medicinal value in terms of wellness. It's in some instances a cure, in other instances it gives relief to certain symptoms that follow certain diseases. For example, epilepsy. I think there was a great program on CNN, Dr. Sandra Gupta, Weed 1, 2, and 3, where one of the startling discovery in the treatment of epilepsy on minors, 3, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months old, would be the administering of cannabis, medicinal cannabis, to that infant. And the seizures subsided significantly. I say all that to lay a certain foundation with respect to medicinal cannabis and the benefits that can accrue to Grenada as a consequence of having a medicinal cannabis industry. Stop there. A commission was constituted in furtherance of the commitment made by the NDC party, and we struggled through debates. And notwithstanding that Grenada is the l'étranger, the stranger, in the midst of all the other Caribbean countries, the OECS, CARICOM, we're, I think, the only CARICOM member state, and also the OECS conglomerate as a sub-region that is still wavering and not yet introduced a decriminalized bill that would amend the draconian provisions of the Drug Prevention and
But Mr.
Control
Chairman, the
Act.
government is waiting on you, on your work.
We made recommendations. We were able. We had difficulty. The commission was too large, and you had members there initially who didn't share the government's policy, who were there questioning the mental danger.
So, Mr. Chairman, what is your present mandate and what's the timeline?
Yeah, well, the timeline is we have overcome that inertia in the commission. The government appointed a committee, reduced numbers, 6. We now have Dr. Guido Marcel, who is
Herbalist,
a botanist,
botanist,
herbalist.
yeah.
And of course, you have
the police?
the police there, and other individuals from different...
You have a doctor there also?
Yes, we do have a doctor now.
Okay.
Dr. Charles, who was a CMO.
Okay.
And he took a certain position to that delayed passage of the initial recommendation to the government. We had to do a series of amendments. Look, Byron, thank God, and I always offer great thanks, that I'm not in bureaucracy. I've worked in a limited capacity as an ambassador for this country and senior crown counsel when I just came back. But man, to get through certain proposals, we are now where we just got passage of the policy statement that would lay the foundation, the fundamental prop and support for decriminalization and also for legalization ultimately.
But Counsel, listening to you, it says to me that the decriminalization of cannabis and what is said on the campaign and so on is not of importance as it was, and we made a campaign promise. Fine, that's fine. But coming into government and seeing all the things that are coming before them, they are burial. They have a lot of things coming at them now at speed. So to me, this passage and the bill and all the discussions is low down on the thought, on the
Well, I think we have been able, the Rastafarian community, and let me tell you, this crystallized when we went to that conference in St. Vincent. It was an international conference on cannabis. The Attorney General, Claudia Joseph, the Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Andrews, and myself, and a delegation from the Rastafarian community. We attended that international conference. And upon our return, I, as chairman, advised the Grenadian people as to where we are and how dedicated we are to the proposition that we're going to decriminalize cannabis in short order. Because you see, let me tell you why, Chris. A young man in Grenada, 18, 19, or 20 years old, he's apprehended with one more marijuana cigarette, half an ounce, 20 grams. He is subject to criminal prosecution and liable to a fine of $250,000, that's a maximum, or imprisonment for 5 years. Now, magistrates have not been imposing the maximum penalty, but what they have been doing is fining these young fellows, and as a consequence, they have a criminal record for narcotics. So if they try to get into a university, a college, a proper job, that is a stigma, and it inhibits their mobility educationally and occupationally.
Anslem, we have not, this discussion have been long. Through the CARICOM.
Yes.
Reports have come out.
Yes.
The last government, through Honorable Peter David at the time, was championing this thing about the decriminalization in the first instance.
Yes.
It was already, it was tabled in the lower house actually in 2021.
Yeah. And we can't seem to get over this hurdle of let's start with decriminalization, because I understand the plight, as you just elucidated, that we need to, one stick or two or three, whatever it is, and you get a criminal record for life. And decriminalization was to deal with that.
Yes, of course.
And to make
and
sure
to pardon people and erase the...
So the question is it a political will issue that we're having, and that we don't want to send a perception? I don't know where the perception is going to be sent, but in the region, a lot of countries within the OECS, we have St. Vincent, we have other countries, Barbados to some extent, and all of them have gone with certain types of legislation gradually and so on. But we don't seem to be able, your chairmanship will have hopefully, with your legal background, push it.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be stuttering.
Yeah. But let me tell you something. You're right, Chris. I know you're an economist and you're quite a wizard in that regard, but you're perfectly right. There is something somewhere. I cannot fathom it. I cannot speak to it. But all these delays, they are attributed to this has to be that way, that must be that way, and the other. What I do know is a lawyer from Trinidad, Sukran, he came up when, at the time on the commission, my designated position was advisor to the Attorney General. I was not yet chairman of the committee, the condensed committee. And Sukran drafted an amendment bill amending the certain provisions of the Drug Prevention and Control Act and having possession, cultivation in excess of the prescribed quantity in the bill to be visited not by penal sanction, not by convictions, but by what you call a notice. And therefore, you're given a ticket, just as if you don't wear your seat belt, and you pay that ticket. And if you don't pay it within a certain time, well, there are consequences, but never imprisonment and never a record for that quantity.
So is it a fair situation that we have fear within the police bureau of, if we go there, what could be the possible cons to decriminalization, probably excessive use? Is there a fear?
Yeah.
And in Grenada, we're good at making laws and regulations, but we're terrible at enforcement.
Oh, precisely.
So is there that fear that the infrastructure for it is not there to support what it's supposed
Well, that is true in a sense, and this is why you're right. The infrastructure is not there, and this is why I have advised the public at large, especially the Rastafarian community in the first instance, because of the religious aspect of ganja consumption for sacramental purposes. And they have been progenitors for over 50, 100 years, from Jamaica down, and they have been recognized for their religious use of the herb religiously, and that's recognized internationally. Canada, Germany, England, Australia, New Zealand. The world is now enjoying the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And we are still here. If you put your tree out in the pot on the veranda to make your tea that is so good to cleanse your system, oh man, the benefits are enormous.
And this is all documented. But you're the
all
chairman.
documented.
But Council, you're the chairman.
Yeah.
And you have not answered the question. Projecting where the commission is as of now, today. What are you, because you've been here before, and the projection you gave us have not.
But I'm not in government.
So try, I know. But you have to be realistic. The government has set target. Look, last year they said by the first quarter of 2020, it hasn't happened. We're in another year. What can you, because we're going to bring you back, and so we're recording this. What can the public expect realistically going forward?
Baron, I had...
Given all that you know and the work of the commission, because the commission has a staff, the commission has resources to do its work. Do we still have to go back to consultation, for example?
Well, that's...
What are the tasks? What are the activities?
They seem to think we have to go back to consultation, but my advice is we don't, because 2/3 of Grenada smoke anyhow. And, the use of marijuana medicinally or recreationally is sanctioned globally. So that, look, because we are so slow in implementing certain laws to avoid penal sanction, tourists now even come into Grenada in mass as they would, because you can smoke in Canada, you can have a certain amount for medicinal purposes, and the young people everywhere they smoke. In Germany, they say 24.5 million.
So, Council, timeline, Council. Timeline.
So
I want to keep you on that track. Timeline.
Let me get to that, Byron. So that I have pointed out to our beloved Prime Minister that, look, we're losing not only political capital, but also economic advantage, because tourists wouldn't come to Grenada where the laws are so prohibitive. If they're apprehended, it does it has a deleterious effect on the economy of the country. So he gave me his undertaking. He's a man of great honor, a very distinguished gentleman, practice,
Prime Minister
of the profession. And he said to me, Slum, we have just passed, the cabinet has approved the policy statement, and that is the fundamental prop and support of the entire industry itself.
Because you operate from that policy.
You operate from that policy, and that has gone through cabinet. And he said, look, we are moving with alacrity to get the drafting done. But we had submitted, and the Minister of Agriculture said to me that the work done by Sukran and myself, there's no before the minister a draft bill. And let me tell you something, Byron.
You have a draft bill.
Yeah, everything is in. It has been in. And I want to make the point. I've had colleagues, well, you know, I did my law in Canada.
Yes.
I'm a Canadian trained barrister. So I had one of my law school colleagues, Ruben, he's a judge in British Columbia. And that's one of the provinces that was so liberal.
Yeah.
They've been smoking there. He smokes himself. He's now retired. So I sent our proposed bill and so forth to him because he had to adjudicate on the Canadian Cannabis Act, the federal act itself. And he sent down, made 2 or 3 recommendations. He said to me, he says, Slim, well, they call me Annie in law school. He said, Annie, this is a great bill. This is precisely what Canada did. Move with it.
Let me
And
change.
we support it. We sent it
So
to the
time,
Attorney General.
So comes to 6 months, 1 year. When can
Well,
we expect
the first
this
quarter, the first quarter of this year. When would the first
That's
quarter
next
expire?
month. Next month. You're
Well,
talking
March.
about 5 weeks from
Yeah,
now.
yeah. It's very likely to emerge in 5 weeks. And it will be a joyous celebration
I'll
for the
quote,
nation.
I'll quote you on this.
Quote
5
me on
weeks.
this one.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me shift it one bit, because we have had all these timelines that have never been met. And you get a sense, let's say the bill speaks to 18-year-olds and above, right, who could have this and be held and no criminal record. What about the 17-year-old?
Well, this is the problem.
And what
because-
about
Yeah.
the fear of parents
Yeah.
with their children
Yeah.
and how that is going to impact the politics?
Well, yeah.
Because people vote with emotions and they vote on what they think is right or wrong from their own perspective. And is it that the politicians are concerned that politically this goes through and you have young teenagers, probably 15, 16, 17. How do we control and ensure that they stay away until they reach 18?
This is where the schools come in. You went to presentation, boys college or GVSS?
Presentation.
Presentation.
Same.
Campbell, where you
Same.
went? Presentation. You're college boys.
That's correct.
Can't go
Well,
to the other place.
well, let me tell you, well, that's the best place. You guys, you all ain't go to school. If you ain't go to grammar school, you ain't go to school.
Come on.
Anyhow, let me tell you. Byron, you know, man, you couldn't, as a student, be seen smoking a cigarette in public. But you know something? Even in the cadets, we used to get together among ourselves and take a little drink and smoke a little cigarette and puff and stuff like that. In those days, we didn't have much cannabis around, marijuana around. The point I'm making is, you can legislate from here to Timbuktu, but you have to change the manner of inculcating values and norms and mores to the young people. And if you were caught smoking a cigarette when you're in GVSS, you're suspended. Your parents had to come down to the school. And I mean, K.I.M. Smith is a young man.
There's some straps also.
Man, you bend over, you get 6 of the best. So you don't find yourself smoking and drinking.
Well,
if you're on the age.
Our socialization in this era is quite different. We don't have the community to help bring up children. We have a lot of single parents who are working and they can't police their children as they ought to. Hence the whole gang thing. So we can talk about that till the end of eternity. The point I'm making is parents who are concerned about their children in school. Let's assume you are a 17-year-old or 16-year-old got caught in school smoking in a school environment. What is, you see, that, and smoking in public, what happens, I mean, how do we control, and that is where I'm talking about the fear and the possible political implications that how people will look at it.
But you see, we have regulatory mechanisms in place. moral suasion, peer group influence. All of those regulatory mechanisms fall in to deter young people under 18 from indulging in activities that are unlawful.
Like alcohol consumption.
Pardon me?
Alcohol consumption is one of the substances.
For example, alcohol. I mean,
we've never been
you can walk into a little store on the Carnage as a young fellow, 16 or 17 years, and going and buy a beer. Nah. And there's certain guys in your school, if the prefect see you hanging around in the village somewhere by a store, he would come in there and check you out.
That was in your time, my time.
But it's still there.
So here's it, Chris.
That is a debate.
I come from a community. I've been there living for 44 years. And from that period to now, cannabis has always and remain accessible in the community.
Good.
I don't see young people underage using it. I don't see it being consumed publicly anywhere.
Right.
The introduction of legalization is not going to change anything.
No, it won't.
I don't foresee anybody using more because it's available right now to them in that community. So in the past, you've had arrests being made by some of the small growers in the village, but I don't hear much about this anymore.
But Baron, you know what we are losing sight of? The economic benefit to the
So let's talk about that.
Employment. Billions of dollars, man.
Yeah, but I mean,
but we start too late.
Yes, that's the point.
Because the former Prime Minister said over his dead body he would ever legalize
here's the thing, Council. That
marijuana.
I got some data, and looking at the Caribbean, the cannabis market in the Caribbean is projected to grow annually. So between 2024 and 2029, reaching a value of about over $350 million US. So my question to you: how does Grenada plan to position itself within this extended market? Where are we? Because you're talking about an industry.
Well, look, man,
and we not yet even have.
Let me tell you how we're going to do it. My recommendation, whether accept or not, just as the Germans did with Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, to circumvent the United Nations Treaty on Narcotics that we are signatory to. Canada did it themselves. You create cooperatives. In Germany, they said you create sporting clubs, and members join the club, and each member is entitled to a certain quantity, licensed of course, to sell. And therefore, you circumvent the UN statute. I won't go into the legal intricacies. Save and except to say, look, man, this is an industry that would create employment as I have seen in St. Vincent, as I've seen in Canada. I mean, I was shocked about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I went to Canada and attended a farm project at Niagara College. I returned to Grenada. I had some friends, because I spent about 18 years in Canada. And they were going to offer 2 students per year to come to Niagara College for 18 months to be certified as growers. Because the cultivation of marijuana,
there are some that
ganja, is very, very technical, especially when you go medicinal. You have to have laboratories, research, everything. And fortunately, fortuitously for us, we have St. George's University, and we can, if we transform it into a teaching institution too, we can have a scientific exploratory laboratory there.
From a business perspective, solely from a business perspective, unless we have the legislation and the legal environment to support it, businesses will invest when they believe the market is at a level that could purport and support. And at the end of the day, like alcohol, when alcohol became legal, when we had the running of alcohol and bootlegging and so on in the US, the price dropped significantly because there was a lot of volume, there are a lot of people on the market now supplying. So from a supply and demand point of view, businesses coming in now will have to be very cautious based on the investment they have to put and the return, because prices, and these prices are not regulated, they go by market terms and conditions.
But that's
Canada had issues. California had issues.
Yes,
A lot-
Colorado had issues.
Colorado had issues,
Yeah.
and a lot of them had to pull
Australia
back.
has issues
Yeah,
now.
so
Yeah.
I'm saying we could learn from their mistakes, obviously.
Precisely.
But at the end of the day, our mass and our smallness and our scale of operations is going to limit this, all these millions we talk about are potential.
But let me
understand?
tell you, the same thing with our cocoa and nutmeg. Because of our unique position, geographically, typographically, our soil is the best. Because Indonesia produce tons of nutmeg that we can't even match on economies of scale. Yet, Grenada nutmeg
Quality.
whole
We beat them on
quality,
yeah.
and that's what we're going to do with marijuana. Your spice weed will be the best weed in the world, and we would be able to attract a market that's international. Canada's now importing weed from Jamaica. You hear me? So look, man, we got to move with alacrity now and with all deliberate speed, because you are an economist, the global market is perfectly elastic. Is that the right one, or being
No, elastic is but
elastic
with-
is right?
with Trump 2.0 now, and you see what recently happened with the flying of drones over the Mexican border to start to control the flow of drugs into the U.S.
But
You
type
had-
of drugs, not
Yeah,
ganja.
no,
But let me tell you what's
I'm
going to
just
happen.
saying.
Trump is going to, because it is economically viable now. And I feel Trump is going to legalize. I saw the chairman of our bank, the OECS bank, speaking of certain difficulties, because he too now preaching to the region as to the economic benefits to be had from medicinal and recreational cannabis if you come up to certain international quality control standards.
My information is Barbados is far advanced. They
Well,
have
good.
significant investment
Yeah.
in this area. But I don't want us to lose sight of the point Chris made, addressing public concern. And I would ask, what support system do you anticipate to be in place for individuals
yeah.
who may face challenges relating to cannabis use?
Yeah.
That's important, the educational aspect.
Yes.
That is crucial. But looking at the budget address is in 2 weeks, Chris?
7th of March.
What do you anticipate is what's going to be said? Because the government will address it, I'm sure, because they'd addressed it last budget.
Sure
They
they
didn't
will.
meet the deadline.
Sure they
So
will.
you're saying that they would announce that in,
I suspect so.
yeah, okay.
My casual Christmas discussion
Yeah.
with our beloved Prime Minister,
Yeah.
he reassured me, Slum, I know you're anxious. I've been in the business for over 25 years.
Yeah, but the Throne speech in 2024 did not, in the legislative agenda, address anything with cannabis.
Yeah. But you
And that
see,
is a disappointment. And from where you sit as
Yeah.
chairman of the commission,
Yeah.
this budget, if it talks about it, I mean, or what they're doing, we know it ain't going to happen in the first quarter.
no, it would. The passage of this legislation is imminent.
Okay, Chairman, one of the things that the mandate given to the commission is that the consultation, whatever, but to come up with the structural arrangement, the specific arrangements for the operationalization of this industry and
Yeah.
the safeguards and all that. Anything you want to disclose to us at this point before we hear it
Yes.
officially? What direction, what kind of clusters, how is it likely to be? I hear you mentioned cooperative. What exactly can we expect?
Land. One thing I know.
Well, like for
that we
example,
have-
a common question that's
Yeah.
just asked, how many plants would be available per
Yeah, well,
household?
hold on, let me tell you.
What is it?
Well, right now we
Yeah.
have recommended, and I think Cabinet has accepted that 5 plants per household, 56 grams for possession. And
You
the
need a
reason
license for
that is,
this?
Yes,
Well,
it's in the
yes,
bill.
of
You have to
course.
have a license.
Okay, to have those for a household.
because you see, it would be an amendment. This is the first step in decriminalizing the Principal Act to permit
Any growth of a
personal
plant,
possession of 56 grams. You must be over 18 years to have possession of 56 grams. And in addition, you must have a household And there's some difficulty with how much in the house, or even entitled fact, every household, 5 trees. That's the beginning. And then there's the cannabis bill, the cannabis act, sorry. Well, the bill goes first and the act. That would speak to licensing, regulatory mechanisms, inspectors, production requirements, quality requirements, export, imports, as the case may be.
And all of this documentation already exists.
Yeah. We have extrapolated some of the key
5
areas
trees-
from the
5 trees
Canadian
per
bill.
household sounds excessive, because you have to understand the yield per tree. And that is something that needs to be spoken about. 1 tree could give you more than 56 grams.
Yeah, but
And based on the maturity of the tree.
but cultivation is different from possession. We are amending sections 5 of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act to say that you permitted 5 trees. That is the medicinal component of the legislation, the draft bill. Because you know, our forefathers, our people, they used to boil it in for tea. And the science now is, and this is where we have to start considering getting seeds, to create a seed bank. And then scientifically, you extrapolate from each seed
Genetically
the genetically engineered seeds.
For certain
Yeah.
medicinal aspects.
Precisely.
But I still think the fear, Council, is that control, and how we're going to exercise control over whether it's 5 trees or 3 trees per household, and so on
Well,
and so
we
forth.
shouldn't
And I
be
think that-
too concerned about that now, because in a 6 months hence, once the amendment is in, you have legalization. And then you come with big license, and this is where I'm speaking of government making available to traditional producers such as the Rastafarian community and other farmers. First of all, we should give traditional farmers land. So I think government would have a policy. I can only say I think because I'm not in government, but those are the recommendations, that each traditional producer be awarded a lease of government land, a minimum of 5 acres. And then for the medicinal aspect of it, you may have to bring in greenhouses and concessions, and big companies will come in, as they have done in St. Vincent. St. Vincent has grown exponentially. They get most of the money from us. Their economy has been thriving because we buy all the stuff there. We lose some of our gallant mariners who go to bring the stuff for us, and so many of us smoke because you can't grow the stuff here. If you grow it here, they'll lock you up.
Council, we saw a photograph with the Prime Minister posing, standing next to a cannabis tree.
Yeah.
We subsequently heard, I think it was Inspector Cohen or Superintendent, making a statement it was like an interim statement saying essentially the police will turn about. But officially, has there been any interim guidelines issued by the police regarding the prosecution of small-scale cannabis offenses?
But I can't speak to that. That's a matter that the Minister of National Security...
But as a lawyer, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing in the courts?
Well, they haven't exercised tolerance.
They
And I've been saying that.
They can't.
Look, man, yesterday I went to court with a young man, 20 years old, okay? They found him with half an ounce of cannabis. He's an accounting clerk, and I wouldn't say where, and I won't call his name.
No, of
in a
course.
recognized little industry in Granville. He was walking along the road, and the police, without reasonable or probable grounds, or whatever information they have, apprehended him. He admitted to them he had him on when they went to wait and everything. And the magistrate said, well, look, the law is the law. But I was able, through persuasion and humbly beg that a criminal record be not registered
Issued, yeah.
against his name, because it was found on him, so we had to plead guilty.
Yeah.
You understand? And I mean, it was painful to see this young man, 20 years old, and he's going
We're
home.
probably the only
He's-
country in the Caribbean where this can happen.
Only country, his counterpart in St. Vincent.
Yeah,
Where
a lot
else?
of yeah, a lot of other
In the
countries in
Caribbean?
the Caribbean that haven't decriminalized marijuana.
Which
ones?
one? Tell me.
Well, we have St. Lucia in decriminalized.
No, that's a decriminalized, man.
No,
Of course.
St. Kitts
Yes.
haven't decriminalized.
Oh, yes, they have.
Yeah.
Look, even Justice, oh boy, what's his name again? He's now elevated. Well, he is here at the Court of Appeal here, and I appeared before him. Oh my goodness, his name escapes me. But he gave a judgment that is binding on the OECS high courts throughout the region. And he gave the government of St. Kitts, the Federation, 90 days to amend the law. That you cannot, it's unconstitutional to invade a man's privacy. In the first instance, it came under the privacy provision of their constitution. But if you find him with a quantity of cannabis, that's for his personal use, he's entitled to it constitutionally. He followed a judgment from the Constitutional Court of South Africa. And if you find 2 trees in his yard, that's for his personal use because of the protection of law provision of the Constitution with respect to privacy.
In Grenada, give you that amount of leeway and flexibility without having legislation in place to back it.
It doesn't necessarily. Our Constitution doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
That's
Well, at least, what's his name again? Ventus. As a matter of fact, when the committee made a presentation to Cabinet, I brought to the attention of the Cabinet the judgment of Mr. Justice Ventus. He's now elevated, I think, to the Court of Appeal from being a puny judge. And that's a groundbreaking decision that binds all our courts. But you see, in the magistrates' court, they follow the law strictissimus juris, strict application. Law says this. And they're afraid to adopt the reasoning in Ventus' case, but the High Court would.
Counsel, that's all the time we have. Closing comments here.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. I think having regard to the work we have done so far, we have seen the light at the end of the tunnel. I can say affirmatively, based on information I have received in my capacity, is that the policy statement has been approved. The next step is the drafting of the legislation, but they do have a preliminary draft. So it doesn't take very much, and it came from Trinidad. We use Trinidad, Canada, and Germany. Those advanced economies where they began by decriminalizing. So we have put that together. It doesn't take much, maybe a little window dressing here and there. We should see legislation in the first quarter of this year.
Thank you very much, Counsel. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Before we close,
Yeah, go ahead. You want to say?
I want to say we omitted in the start of the program to express condolences to the Ramdani family on the passing of Laiden Ramdani. And we want to say, we know how much he contributed to our country in his various capacities over the years, and of course the business of the Ramdani family to the average Grenadian. So to the family, on behalf of us here at the Community Forum, we extend condolences to the family of the Ramdani family, and of course may his soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Chris.
I concur with everything said by Chris.
Thank you. Viewers, that's all the time we have. We want to thank our technical staff and you for your time, staying with us for the hour. We'll see you next week at the same time. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.